Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode. I am so excited because since we launched the Consummate Host, I've been anxious to do a floral episode, and today we're gonna do it. We're going to create these wonderful little small arrangements that work great on like a summer table or maybe a Mother's Day brunch table. And not only do they bring beauty to the table, they're also great little takeaways if you want to give them to your guests. So I'm going to show you a few tips and tricks that will have you creating floral designs like a pro. But first, I want to reach out and say thank you for all the wonderful comments and feedback since we launched our Wayne's Wanderlist series a couple of episodes ago. It's been really great hearing from you, and I'm super excited on the feedback and looking forward to our next episode of Wanderlist, which will be coming up in a month or so. So let's make some flowers. So as I mentioned, we're going to be making these really fun little arrangements today. And as I said, these are perfect for like a summer table or a Mother's Day gathering. I'm doing mine in all bright colors because I'm using these fun mugs that have bright colors. You can use any kind of a palette you want. You can do pastels. There's a lot of variety, but the technique will still be the same. So this is what we're going to be creating. First, before we get started, I have to say I did get a message. Somebody reached out to me with a message and asked if I had changed my mustache. And the answer is yes. Literally 2 days ago, I had jumped in the car like to run to the store, and I realized that the tips of my mustache were touching the bottom of my sunglasses. And I was like, okay, I gotta get this under control. So it's a little shorter now. But anyway, back to flowers. As with anything, in doing this, really the key thing is preparation. So we've got to get our flowers ready before we actually start creating the piece. And what we're going to be doing today is actually kind of a combination of what some people would call like a hand-tied bouquet, but instead of being like a bouquet that you would hold onto or carry, it's going to go into like a container. But it's kind of the same principles as doing a hand-tied bouquet. So the flowers that I'm going to be using, we have a variety actually. So I'm going to be using sunflowers. I'm going to be using spray roses. I'm going to be using the little mini carnations. I love these super bright pink mini carnations. We've got mini daisies. We've also got tulips. I'm going to be using both pink and orange in tulips. So we've got tulips. We've got a little bit of sea lavender. We've got some solidega. This is one of my favorite greens, solidega, so we're using that. And then we also have some blue erngo. I love the texture of this. It just makes things like so interesting. So those are the flowers that I'm going to be using. And like I said, you can pick from anything. The technique is still the same. So what you have to remember when we're doing this is we're going to create everything basically in our hand. We're not going to be arranging in the container itself. We're going to create it in our hand, and then it's going to go into the container. So that said, you want to pre-cut most of your stems so that they're probably right at about 12 inches. And this is for using it in these containers. So you want to remember, you're going to have the portion of the flower that kind of comes up out of the container, and then you've got what goes down into like the water. So we're going to do a lot of pre-cutting. Now, when you're preparing, you want to make sure as you're cutting your stems, when we cut it to that length, so let's give you an example here. So here's an example. You want to make sure that you get all of that greenery that's on the bottom portion of the stem. You want to get all of that off, because when this goes into the water, we don't want any leaves or any greenery going into the water. If you get leaves into the water, what happens is it creates bacteria, and then your flowers won't last as long. Let's talk about tulips first, in case you do decide to use some tulips for this particular arrangement. So if you look at the leaves on the tulip, you can see they don't really go up to like the top of where the bloom is. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually take these leaves off. Now, this leaf is a little bit kind of wilty, so we won't be able to use it. But a leaf like this, you can see this leaf is nice and stiff. We can actually take this and put it up into the arrangement. So when you're taking the leaves off your tulips, you can save these kind of stiffer leaves to use when you're putting the arrangement together. So here's another example with the solidega. You can see I've trimmed it to about this length, which is what we want to work with. But again, I've taken the greens off from the bottom of the stem so that when we put this together, we don't have any of that greenery going into the water. So there's an example with that. Here's another example with like our little mini carnations. Same thing, they're trimmed, but we've gotten all that greenery off so that we don't have anything near the bottom of the stem. So let's get started. What you want to do, or what I prefer to do, is I always start with greenery. And like I said, we're going to create this in our hand, and then we're going to tie it off and then put it into the container. So start with your greenery. As I said, I'm using a very bright color palette. So I just kind of like to mix all colors together. If you have a more specific palette, you can do monochromatic, or you can do all pastels or all brights, however you want to do it. So start with your green, and let's just go ahead and get a tulip. So we'll start with the tulip here. Now, when you're assembling this, you want to get all of the peaks of the flowers at about the same level in your hand. So as you're creating it, you want to keep everything kind of at the same level. So we've got a tulip. Let's go for a spray rose. So here's a little grouping of spray roses. Again, keeping that at the same level, and then just kind of rotate that in your hand as you add flowers. So let's go for the little mini carnations. We'll put those in here. Okay, and then just keep, let's add a sunflower. We can do that. Oh, I didn't mention coffee beans also. I love using coffee beans, and oh, I didn't take the leaves off the bottom of this one, so we'll make sure those are off. So we'll take our coffee beans and put those in there, and then we'll do a little bit of our sea lavender. So we'll take those and add those. They're so vibrant, they look so pretty. And then just keep adding. You'll kind of get a feel for when it's about the right fullness that you want. So get a couple of our blue ergo in there as well. I'm gonna add a few more pops of yellow with our little mini daisies, which I love. Perfect. So we'll just go around. So we're gonna make that just a little bit fuller. So I'm gonna add just a little bit more of the spray rose, just for a little bit more volume there. Maybe a little more coffee bean on one side. And let's see, let's do one more tulip, why not? Get that in there. Perfect. So you can see kind of the volume that we've created, like in our hand here. Now what we're gonna do is you wanna make sure that you cut some, pre-cut some string before you start, so you've got that ready. So now I'm going to show you how you can take some of those leaves from the tulips and integrate them into the arrangement. So if they were still on the tulip stem, they would be like down here, like way too low. So we can take the individual leaves and just layer a few of those in, and that'll give us some nice kind of volume in the arrangement, give us a little bit more green. All right, perfect. Add some purple here. Nice. Got a few little straggler leaves there that we want to get rid of. I'm going to do another coffee bean over on this side. There we go. Okay, let's see. Okay, perfect. And like I said, you want to get that string right at the base of the flowers, right at the base of the buds, the blooms. And then once you've got your string on, we can take that down. Tie ourselves a knot. There we go. The first thing I like to do is I just cut straight across. Get those cut there. Then I'm going to go through and I'm going to do a little bit of an angle cut on those stems. This makes it easier. When you do the angle cut, it makes it easier for the flowers to take up the water. And the stems are long enough to get down into the water. All right, so here's our water, and I like the Crystal flower food. I've used that for years, and it works really great. Gives the flowers a longer life. So go ahead and make sure you've got the water in your container. About 2/3 of the way is perfect. And then we'll just take our arrangement and we'll set it down in there. And that's it. Very simple. So like I said, the fact that we create it kind of like we would create a hand-tied bouquet gives it this look, but then we just trim those stems and put them down into our vessel. Thanks again for joining us today. It's so nice having you with us. I hope I've given you some inspiration for maybe creating some floral for your Mother's Day table, or even just for your mothers. Hopefully you've also gotten some table setting ideas on what you might do for a Mother's Day brunch or a spring dinner. We're so glad you were here. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And our manifesto moment for today is: the most luxurious thing a host can give their guests is time and attention. Thanks again. We'll see you next week.